guys, this is Miss Kristina with the Orange County Children's Therapeutic Arts Center. In this series of online lessons, we are going to learn how to draw a realistic portrait. So what a portrait is a drawing, photograph, or painting of somebody's face, their neck, and their shoulders. So in each lesson, we're going to learn how to draw each feature of the face one step at a time so that when it comes time to put it all together, you'll be confident and know exactly what to do. Let's get started. So for our first online drawing lesson, we're going to learn how to sketch eyes. So that's a feature of the face that a lot of people like to start with to draw, partially because they express so much emotion. You can tell so much about a person by looking at their eyes. So what we're going to need today to start drawing is a piece of paper. I have some drawing paper, but you can use any type of paper that you have at home. And you're going to need some pencils. You'll probably need a pencil sharpener, any kind will do. And you'll need an eraser. I also have a fancy kneaded eraser. I like these a lot. So if you have one of these at home, they work really well. If not, any old eraser is going to be great. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start drawing our eye. The first part of the eye that I always start with is the top shape of the eye. So it kind of looks like a rainbow. You can look in the mirror if you want to see exactly what shape the top of your eye looks like, because it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. Everybody's eyes are different shapes, but we'll just do a general example. And then if you want to pay really close attention, you can go look in the mirror and see exactly what your eyes look like. So when we start sketching, we want to remember to sketch really lightly. You want to hold your pencil not super close to the end. You don't want to hold it super far away, kind of right in the middle where it's comfortable, in between your thumb and these two fingers. And when you're drawing, you never want to hold it like this or press your, or draw with your pencil straight out. You want it always to be at an angle. You want your hand to be soft so that you can move around comfortably and that you're not gripping it so tight. So when we start to sketch, we want to start really lightly. I'm going to draw a little bit darker on my paper just so you can see it on the camera. But at home, start really light in case you need to make changes later, in case you need to use your eraser or your kneaded eraser. In the early stages of a drawing, you always want to make sure that you draw lightly. So we'll get started by deciding how big we want our eye on our paper to be. So we're going to draw an eye and an eyebrow that goes above the eye. So you want to leave space for both. And I turned my paper the landscape direction, the long way, so that I have enough space for the eye and the eyebrow, because I'm going to want to draw both of them pretty big to fill up my page. So we'll start by lightly sketching the top shape of the eye. And like I said, it's like a rainbow shape that's a little curved on the ends. So you can start by drawing kind of a rainbow shape like that. And next, we want to draw the bottom shape of the eye. So it's going to be a little bit curved. It actually will kind of look like a lemon sitting on its side. So a lemon has like this little bump in the corner, and then it goes out like this and connects, and the edges are a little round. So in each corner, you want your edges to be a little bit rounded. They're not going to be really sharp. And they're also, it's not going to be like a complete circle. So you want something kind of looks like a skinny lemon lying on its side. After you draw this step, we're going to draw the actual eyeball that's in the shape of this closed eye. So when you look at your eyes, there's an eyeball that is a complete circle inside the part that you can see with the eyelids on top. So we can only see a portion of that eye. So we're going to draw in the corners some curved lines on one side and on the other side. So this will show us that the eyeball is sitting inside the shape of the eye, but we just can't see the whole thing when our eyes aren't open all the way. So I'm going to erase a little bit, try to make yours kind of round, but you can only see part of it. So after that step, we're going to draw the iris of the eye. So that's the colorful part that when you look at someone's eye, that's how you tell like what color their eyes are. So the iris inside the eye is also a perfect circle, but when somebody's eyes are relaxed, you can't see the whole thing. So we'll start by lightly sketching a full circle inside the eye, and we can erase this part at the top later. So don't worry about that. Just focus on this part at the bottom. So you can see at the top of the eye, it starts and it kind of ends up looking like a U shape since you can't see the whole circle. So you can either just make a U shape inside the shape of the eye, or you can draw the whole circle and then you can erase the parts that we're not going to need. So either way, you want this U shape inside your eye. And you can notice I didn't make it touch the bottom of the eye all the way. It goes down and then it pauses right before the bottom. So after this step, we're going to draw the pupil of the eye. So the pupil is the dark black part in the center. So that is also a perfect circle. A lot of the problems that people run into when they're drawing eyes is they draw the pupil too small, which ends up looking a little scary, or they draw it too big and it makes the eyes look a little unnatural. So you want it kind of to be right in the middle. Like think of a donut or something like that. So you want to start by lightly sketching a circle. And I like to go around and around, over and over, really lightly until my lines become a little bit darker. And then it helps me make the shape that I really want a little bit better. And then I can erase the lines that I don't really need. So don't try to make a perfect circle the first time around. Lightly just sketch, let your hand move in a circular motion until it starts to look like a pretty good circle and you're happy with it. After that, we're going to draw another little circle right here. So what this is going to do is make it look like light is hitting the eye from this direction. So if we have a spot of light in the eye after we do all the shading, it will start to look really realistic. So draw your little circle and then take your eraser and erase the line in the middle that goes through so that you're left with a circle on top of another circle, just like that. So after we do this step, we have basically the whole eye drawn. We're going to add shading later to make it look more realistic. We're going to draw the eyelid. So not everybody has a creased eyelid, but some people do. And a lot of times when we're drawing eyes, we want to draw a line on top of the eye for the crease of the eyelid. So you can decide whether or not you want to do this step, depending on your face or the person's face that you're drawing. But all it is a line. It doesn't touch the corner of the eye, but it starts just above. And it's kind of like another rainbow shape that goes like this and kind of fades away at the end. So it doesn't connect, it just kind of stops like that. So it's like a hill shape right on top of the eye. Then we want to make a little line on the bottom of the eye too. A lot of people have a kind of like a fold of skin here, like a little line under the eye. So you can start in the corner, make a little line like this, and then I just have mine like fade away. I usually don't, it depends on my drawing, but I usually don't make it go all the way to the end, or I draw it and then I stop and then I draw a little line on the end like that. So these are going to be our eyelids. They're going to start looking more realistic when we add the shading. So we just have one more step to do, and then we start the shading where everything comes together and looks more realistic. So the eyebrow is, I think, always a fun thing to draw because everybody's eyebrows look so different. So I'm going to start by really lightly sketching. And if this is the inside of my eye and the nose is over here, the eyebrow is thicker on this side. It's wider, and then it tapers and gets skinny. So what you're going to want to do is, it's kind of like a mountain shape again. Lightly sketch the shape. We're going to be probably erasing some of this, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Start with the top. Yours could be really round, or my eyebrows have kind of like a point in the middle, kind of like that. And then on the inside, you kind of want to make a bubble. So you're going to make this follow the shape on the top. And then when it gets to the end, you're going to make it thinner. So the end of the eyebrow is skinnier than the front of the eyebrow. So just like that. So now is the awesome part of the drawing. This is where the drawing starts to get really magical because we start to add shading. So what shading means is when you sketch lightly with your pencil, back and forth to create different shades of gray. So another word for that is shading creates value. So value is the difference between light and dark. And there should be, in a drawing, a full range of values. So you want to have a value of 0 or 1 being white, and a value of 10 being your darkest black. And the goal for a successful drawing is to have a number of shades in between. So when most people start drawing, they have either 2 or 3 different values of gray. And as you practice more and more, you want to get up to a full range of 10. So you can practice working on those values by doing something called a value chart. You get a ruler and make a 1-inch box in a little rectangle and just practice with your pencil. The first box is white and the last box is black. And see if you can fade your pencil over time from light to dark to give it that full range of values so it looks really smooth. So we'll start shading our eye. You want to hold the pencil kind of just like you were before. You might want to hold it back just a tiny bit, scoot your hand back. You want to hold it really loose, and that's kind of the key for shading. You don't want to hold the pencil too tight. So we'll start by shading in the iris of the eye. So we're going to make it a really nice gray value. So I'm going to use my pencil and go back and forth. And the key to shading is to make it look like there are no pencil lines. You want to try to make it look like all the pencil lines disappeared. We're going to work on another technique to help it look like that later. But right now, I'm just going back and forth and shading in the eye so it's a really nice gray. So I finished shading my eye. The iris is now a really nice gray. I'm not worried about some of the parts where I went outside. Next, I'm going to do a technique called blending. So blending is just where I use my finger. We're going to smooth it all out so it looks really, really smooth. There's no sketchy white and black lines. It's going to look like really soft, solid gray. So take your finger, and when we're blending, you want to move your finger in small circular motions on top of your pencil so that it starts to get really kind of smooth. You'll see when you practice. It will just unify the whole drawing and make it look really, really nice. It's a great technique to use. So I'm going to blend the whole iris of my eye, and then I'm going to take a look again and see what I need to do next. So right now it's a smooth gray. What I want to do is now take my pencil. I'm going to shade a little bit more on the outer rim of the iris, because if you look at somebody's eye, usually it's black in the center, and then it's a lighter color, and it slowly fades to a darker color. So I'm going to lightly with my pencil do some shading on the outer edge of the eye. So I'm going to make it a little bit of a darker value around the edges. So slowly I'm going to go all the way around. Okay, so now that I shaded a little bit more around the outside of the iris, I'm going to blend again. And you'll notice your finger will get a little bit dirty, but don't worry, we'll wash them at the end. So I'm going to use little circles again and moving my finger back and forth to really blend my pencil and make it look really, really smooth. Then, if there's any areas that you want to even out with your pencil, shade a little more, now's the time to do it. So remember that you always shade and then you blend. So I'm just seeing if there's any areas that are kind of uneven, and I'm adding a little bit more pencil there, and I'll blend over it one more time. So now my iris is starting to look like it fades from a lighter gray to a darker gray on the edge. Next, we're going to want to color in the pupil in the center of the eye a really dark black. This is like the blackest black. So on our value chart, it's a number 10. It's really dark. But we want to make sure this little bubble of white here stays white. So just draw around that. So using your pencil, try to make the inside of the eye, the pupil, the darkest black that you can. After all that shading, your pencil might be a little dull, so check your pencil. You always want to make sure that your pencil is pretty sharp. Don't let it get super dull because it's not a really good drawing tool if that happens. So shade, remember, and then use your finger to blend. And this will feel kind of different than blending the other gray because there's so much more graphite from your pencil on the paper now. So now we have the dark pupil, and it slowly fades out into a darker gray on the outside of the iris. So what we want to do now is use our erasers, and we're going to make that little highlight inside the eye stand out even more. So take your erasers and erase inside of that circle of light, because it probably has gotten a little dirty at this point from all the extra pencil. So We're gonna make it pop, so it's really bright white. So you can see now it starts to look like there's light hitting the eye from this direction. It's a little spot of light. And you might want to also use your eraser now and erase around the eye the parts that don't need to be shaded. So I'm just going around the edges in case any of my shading got outside of the lines. And if I erase too much, I can always draw back a little bit. So I erased any of my extra pencil lines outside of the iris of my eye after I shaded. So now I'm going to add a little bit more shading on the inside of the eye. We want to add a tiny bit of shading at the top of the white part of the eye, like this, on both sides. So just a little at the top. So it will make it look like there's a little shadow under the top of the eye, and then blend with your finger on both sides. And then I want to erase a little bit right here actually, because I blended a little more than I thought I would. And then we want to shade the inner corners of the eye also. So these parts of the eye, the little lemon-shaped corners, we want to shade those in too. So remember, don't worry too much about staying inside the lines, because you can always erase later on. So let's see. The white part of the eye stands out a little bit from the corners of the eye, and the top of the eye is a little bit darker too. So blend, shade, and this is what our eye looks like so far. If you went outside the lines, use your eraser and just clean up the edges a tiny bit, like that. So now we're ready to do the final details for inside the iris. You want to use the side of your pencil for this. Don't use the point. We want the side so it makes a wide line. So we want to add a couple lines going out from the inside, from the pupil to the outside edge of the iris. So this will just be kind of a nice detail for the eye, because irises, if you look at them really closely, they have a lot of patterns in them, and sometimes they're harder to see than others. On some people's eyes you can really see, but it's just kind of something that helps make the drawing of the eye look really beautiful. So let's add a couple lines. See how they radiate out like lines from the sun. And actually, if I think about it that way, right now the center of our eye kind of looks like an eclipse. It looks like the moon is like moving in front of the sun. It's kind of interesting. I've never thought about it that way. So add some lines, and then the iris of our eye is complete. So next, we're going to want to add some shading on top of the eyelid. So once again, use the side of your pencil. I'm holding pretty far back because it helps me hold my pencil really loose. So, because I don't need a lot of control with my pencil at this stage, I just need to have a right amount of pressure, and it's a really light pressure. So hold towards the back of your pencil, and we're going to start shading on top of the eyelid to add a shadow. So go all along the eyelid like this. And when you're done shading the top eyelid, let's add a little bit of shading under the bottom of the eye too, like this. So after you finish shading the top of the eyelid and a little bit on the bottom, remember to do your blending. So move your finger back and forth. This time for the blending, you might want to rub your finger above your pencil lines also, so it starts to fade into the space below the eyebrow. So we have a really smooth, it's called a gradation. So when it looks like, when you're looking at a sunset and you see all the colors like fading together really smoothly, you can say that's a gradation. So we want our blending to be a gradation from a darker gray to a lighter gray up until the eyebrow. So, and then blend the bottom too. So when you're blending the bottom, you want to move your finger a little bit below your blending also, so it starts to look more natural. So like this. We probably want to add a little bit of shading towards the end of the eye too. So we'll add a little shading right above the eye that goes into the corner like this, and then we'll blend it. Like that. And I'm going to use my eraser now to clean up the edge where I might have blended onto the eyelid a little bit. So I just want to make sure my edges are a little cleaned up. And on the bottom, I'll do the same thing, just to make sure that's really white again. There we go. So next, we're going to shade the eyebrow. And don't worry, we'll do eyelashes, but that's one of the last steps that we'll do. So now let's shade in the whole eyebrow, and then we're going to add the details. When you've shaded the whole thing, remember, start blending. Always shade and then blend. So we'll finish our blending, and then what we want to do is use the side of our pencil, just like we did to make lines in the center of the iris. We want to make some lines on the eyebrow that show the eyebrow is hair. So some lines you want to make longer than others. Some lines you might want to use a little more pressure and make them darker. You want to make them follow the shape of the eye. So they're kind of, think about like waves in the ocean. You want to use some lines that are curved, and they're going to fill up the whole eyebrow until there's little ones at the end. So think you can add more than this, you can add less, it's up to you. If you want to blend over some areas, you can blend over some of your lines again also. And you might want to add a little more shading on the bottom of the eyebrow and then blend it again, just so the hair starts to blend in and it looks a little bit more natural. So I'm going to add a little more shading, blend, maybe a few more lines, using, remember, the side of your pencil so you get that broad pencil stroke. It gives the drawing a different texture if you use the side of your pencil instead of the point. So I think I like that eyebrow. So I think I'm going to leave mine just like this, maybe add some shading in the front, like that. Maybe erase a little bit of the area where maybe I blended a little too far. Okay, so next we're going to add the eyelashes of the eye as our final step. So I think first I'm going to add a tiny bit of shading to the top of the eye. But I don't have to do too much because I'm going to add those eyelashes. So I'll add a little bit of shading here. Blend it really quick. And now I'm ready to start the final part of my eye. After I erase a little bit at the top, make it a little more white on my paper. Okay, now the eyelashes are pretty fun. A lot of people are a little intimidated to draw eyelashes, but it's pretty simple. So the trick to drawing eyelashes is just to make sure that you draw them curved towards the outside of the eye. You don't want straight lines like sticks, but you want them to be natural. And if this is the inside of the eye, if the nose is going to be right here, I want my eyelashes to curve away from the nose. So on this side of the face, my eyelashes are going to go this direction. So think about like ocean waves. They're not straight, so don't draw straight lines like that for your eyelashes. So remember, use the side of your pencil so you get a softer line. You see the difference when I make lines like this with the tip of my pencil and when I make lines like this with the side of my pencil. I get wider marks that are a little softer and they're not so sharp. So I'm going to start making my eyelashes from the inside corner of the eye. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to start to draw some lines that are a little curved. And as I get towards the outside of the eye, they're going to get a little bit longer and taller. So you can fill up your eye with as many eyelashes or as little as you want. You actually don't have to draw eyelashes if you don't want to. It's up to you. So see how when I get towards the end, the angle of the eyelashes changes a little bit. It goes a little bit out more to the side. And I'm going to go all the way to the corner of my eye with my eyelashes, just like that. And if there's any spaces I want to fill in or make maybe some longer ones, I can do that too. And then I'm going to kind of blend again towards the, on the top of the eye, just to add a little bit of a shadow, like that. Then I'm just going to add a couple eyelashes on the bottom of my eye. I usually add some like this, kind of starting in the corner. And these don't have to be as dark. So you don't have to press as hard with your pencil for these. These are like little baby eyelashes. So you can add a couple. Almost everybody has these, but they're hard to see. So I usually just add a few on the bottom, definitely not as big as the ones on the top. So now it looks like our eye is pretty finished. So what I'll do is just maybe if I see anything that I want to change, I'll add a few more details. I might add some shading so I have a little bit more value. So I'm just going to do a few finishing touches on my drawing. So you can do the same thing on yours. Take a look at the drawing as a whole and see if there's any areas that you want to add or you want to change. So I'm going to take a few minutes and just add a few details on my drawing. So this concludes our first lesson in our portrait series. So we're going to be practicing all the different features of the face. Next time we're going to learn how to draw the nose. So once we have all of these features practiced, then we're going to put them all together to create our final portrait. So today we learned a lot of new techniques. You might have learned about shading or blending, and we learned about value. So remember, value is the scale from light to dark in a drawing. And in our drawings, we have the white parts of the paper and the blackest parts and all those grays in between. So keep practicing, trying to get that full range of values. And we have a lot of new exciting things to come that we're going to continue learning. So I can't wait to see you next time. Keep practicing.